Tom, we've quoted you right and left. I don't think you heard any of it, but I'll quote you again with your latest piece in The Atlantic. You write this, quote, Donald Trump and his administration have pioneered the practice of vice signaling, or saying insulting or odious things, both as attention-seeking behavior and as a way of showcasing their supposedly transgressive political views. Vice signaling is rampant throughout the Trump administration because the president's appointees know that the boss likes underlings who emulate his aggressive indecency. But when the man in charge of the Defense Department disgorges this kind of toxic waste, it seeps into the groundwater of military culture. It tells young service members, and men especially, that racism, sexism, and the display of faux masculinity are signs of a true warrior. That's appalling anytime, but especially when you've taken the country to war and in Iran.
And taken the country to war for no reason other than, the glory of Donald Trump, of, these people who have stumbled their way into a war, can't figure out how to stumble out of it. I'm glad to be back. I heard Mark right at the end saying, who knows? We could wake up tomorrow and the president's going to say that he's putting 5,000 troops into Iran because, I'll say it again, because the president is an emotionally unstable and cognitively impaired person. And so we can't really know at any given moment what our policy is. And I don't think anyone else in the government knows what our policy is. But to put people in harm's way and then to have Pete Hegseth, who's clearly working out issues of his own in public somehow, talking about, praying for overwhelming violence and no mercy and, all of this kind of chest thumping, very juvenile behavior that, real warriors like people like Mark know is, the sign not of a man, but of a boy, is really a terrible thing. And it sends a message along with Hegseth's other behavior, which is includes things like yanking the promotions of 2 women and 2 black officers, of, the things that he has said about women in combat in his attempt to clear them out of the senior ranks, of his, childish behavior and childish rhetoric about war, which is, the most serious thing a country can undertake. It sends a message that, to the rest of the force that this is not a serious business, that it's okay to be sexist and racist and misogynistic and all the other isms that that Hegseth thinks he's so proud to transgress. And I think it sends a terrible sign to the families of the people who serve. That their sons and daughters are in the hands of somebody, 2 people, the president and the secretary of defense, who think this is all about them, and are acting, like a couple of jumped up teenagers when we're at war with a country of 90 million people.
I mean, Tom Nichols, what is your best explanation for why the men and women in Congress who see everything you just articulated, just as you do, doing nothing? I mean, Pete Hegseth has oversight committees. There are things that people could do to protect the men and women of the military who don't have a lot of recourse. They have to follow the chain of command. And as we've been discussing, Donald Trump sits atop it with Pete Hegseth right there.
Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing was obscene. It was, I would say it's a joke, but it was too deadly serious to be a joke. And yet he was confirmed by a tie-breaking vote, which should never have happened. The reason that no one steps up now is that Republican members of Congress like being members of Congress. They like being in Washington. They like their jobs. They like being driven to work and having people bring their coffee. And they don't want to have to go home and live among their own constituents after they get primaried for standing up and opposing the behavior of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. So they're just keeping their heads down, hoping to survive yet another electoral cycle, and, waiting for the moment when all this goes away. And so far, for a lot of them, that's been a pretty good survival strategy. But make no mistake about it, it's cowardly, it's shallow, it's venal. And it says that they would rather keep their jobs and not get primaried than speak up and point out that, the people that are putting our children in danger, our young men and women in danger, don't know what the hell they're doing.
Well, I guess I'd say as the only person here who worked on campaigns, I mean, it's not the political flex that they think it is. Sending troops into Iran has an 8% approval rating. The current operation in Iran has about a 20% approval rating. I mean, Tom, just pull that political thread a little tighter for me. To whom are they kowtowing other than a president with a plunging, I mean, his popularity is plunging faster than a cement brick.
But what else have they got, Nicole? Where are they going to go? Remember that to get taken out in a primary, you don't need an overwhelming turnout against you. Primaries are low turnout affairs that are controlled often by the most vocal and engaged and sometimes the most extreme part of the electorate. And that's true in both parties, by the way, that you can get primaried out. I always point out to people that the future Speaker of the House got primaried out of his seat by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in a primary that had something like a 15% turnout. All you have to do is have Donald Trump get enough people mad to show up to a primary and to give you a run for your life. I mean, look at the situation John Cornyn's in Texas right now. Look at the situation other Republican electeds are in. So you're right. It's not, as you know this as a campaign person. This is really hitching yourself to a dog of an issue. But what else? To quote a famous movie, An Officer and a Gentleman, they've got nowhere else to go. So what are they going to do?